guys, welcome to another video for anatomy and physiology. In this video we're looking at epithelium, which is just a fancy word for human tissue, for cells, for the different types of cell that the human is made out of. This is part one of two. In this video we're going to be looking at the four types of cells that I have here labeled. We have the simple squamous, simple cuboidal, simple columnar, and the pseudo-stratified columnar. So if you look at these names really carefully, these actually give you a huge hint as to the type of structure that this cell has and the things that we're going to highlight in this video. So let's look at some of the basics for epithelial tissue. So each cell is, every one of these cells has a cell, and they come in different shapes and sizes and such, but they all are made out of the same essential components. You have the membrane that is surrounding the cell. Then you have the cytoplasm on the inside and the organelles, and then the blue is the nucleus, and that's where the DNA is contained. For more on that, I do have a video on the cell and its different structures. I do suggest that you go and watch it just to kind of refresh your memory. So let's look at the three different types of cells. Now, there's actually 5 types of cells. We have blood, muscle, nerve cells, and things like that. But we're looking at just epithelial tissue. All right. So when we look at the cell, when we look at the membrane, there's two sides to it. We have the apical surface and the basal surface. The basal surface is the part of the cell that is connected to, if you're kind of looking at a tree, the root system is underground, right? That's the part, that's like the bottom part. That would be the basal surface. And then the canopy where the leaves are, that's exposed to the external, the outside, that's the apical surface. All right. So the basal surface has what's called a basal basement membrane, and that's the part of the cell that is attached to the body itself. Okay, so that's kind of the basement, if you will, the base or the root system that is attached to the body. Okay, and the 3 basic shapes of a cell. The first one is called simple, which means it's just a single layer. Then we have a pseudo-stratified columnar. Pseudo-stratified, the word pseudo means fake. So pseudo-stratified means that it appears that it's stratified. Stratified meaning that it's multi-layered. See, this gives the appearance of multi-layered because the nuclei are at different levels, and you might think that they're different levels, but it's not. It's just that they're just uneven, and it gives the appearance of stratified. So it is called pseudo-stratified. And then we have stratified, which is actually multi-layered cells. And stratified we will address in part 2. This one we're just going to be looking at simple and pseudo-stratified. So the first type of cell is simple squamous. This is a single layer. Okay, so I'm going to highlight that single layer. If you look at the slide here, it's the light blue. You can tell that it's a very thin layer. Now this type of cell, this simple squamous, like I said, it's kind of like a pancake layer, and then you have the loose connective tissue that's in the basement side, the basement membrane side of or that's actually the basal side of the cell, and then you have the basement. Actually, back up. Then you have the basement membrane at the bottom there. So simple squamous is more suited for diffusion. So if you want, for example, like in the lungs, when oxygen is being diffused from one side to the other, you want something that's thin where small molecules can come through fairly easily. Okay, so the exchanges of gas. So it's a very thin layer. So for lymph tissue where blood and solutes are coming from the blood system into the lymph system, bacteria, antibodies, stuff like that, that you want a thin layer so that these molecules, these other cells can diffuse more easily, or a gas like oxygen or carbon dioxide. Simple squamous. Okay, so blood tissue or lung tissue. And then we have simple cuboidal. So the difference between simple cuboidal and simple squamous is, we'll look at the word cuboidal. It's more of a cube shape, so it's a little bit thicker epithelial. It's a single layer of cube-shaped cells. Okay, and then so you have the top layer, the A layer, and the B layer. These types of cells, okay, another thing is that the nuclei are centrally located in these cells. So, if you think back to when I said pseudo-stratified, what caused you to think that it was stratified is the fact that the nuclei were at different levels. But with the simple cuboidal, the nuclei are fairly aligned, giving the impression of a single layer. Okay. And see here, you can see each oval kind of like a donut shaped shape there. You see the simple cuboidal cells there. Okay, and you'll see these like in your kidneys for secretion and absorption of solutes. Okay, so you have slightly bigger solutes that are being absorbed here or passed on from one side to the other, like in your urine, right? You have a lot of waste product from that's leaving your blood and then being excreted into your urine. And so these cells are slightly larger than your simple cuboidal, where again, going back to simple cuboidal, you're exchanging smaller atoms and molecules. So you need something thinner as opposed to larger molecules like in the kidneys. Okay, and then you have simple columnar. Simple columnar, you'll see that columnar, it's column, so it's a much longer elongated cell, and then the nuclei are fairly leveled out. Okay, so they're elongated cells, much thicker. So the nuclei are near the basement membrane at the bottom. Okay, here's another image of that. Okay, so they secrete and digest fluids and absorbs nutrients. So if you think as to where this happens, this would be in the intestinal system, the small intestine and large intestine. So these cells are much larger, where they are secreting and exchanging not just blood, but also nutrients, molecules that your body needs for energy and growth. So your stomach is also one where you're secreting hydrochloric acid and different enzymes for digestion. Okay, the uterus. And then you have simple columnar epithelium still. Now the difference between this simple columnar, if you let's look at the previous image there. So look at this one fairly close, pause it, study it very well, and then look at the next one. Okay, now you'll notice there's a difference. You'll notice that there's tiny hairs on the top layer. Okay, this is what's called ciliated. So these are ciliated simple columnar cells. Ciliated are those tiny hairs, and these are basically cell hairs that they're not stationary, but they help and they aid in the movement of molecules or debris. Okay, so I have that layer highlighted there for you. So your simple columnar epithelium, here you have again, this is a smooth. So we have goblet cells that secrete mucus. I'm going to highlight those right there. Those are goblet cells. And then again, you have this is a pseudo stratified columnar. Now it's important that you study this and you study the simple columnar, because the pseudo stratified, you'll notice that the nuclei are kind of all over the place, and it gives the impression that there's different layers, but it's actually just one long columnar cell that the nuclei are in different levels, and it's pseudo stratified. So it's a fake stratified. It appears to be stratified, but it's not. Okay, and these also will have goblet cells that secrete mucus. Okay, and you'll find these in the trachea, and again, they secrete mucus. So when you think about when you're clearing your throat, you're actually expelling mucus that has particles that you've been breathing in. So you'll breathe in, say it's a really dusty day or there's a lot of pollen in the air, and you breathe that stuff in. Your lungs can't get rid of that stuff. It can't secrete that into the blood. So if your nose hairs or the mucus in your mouth doesn't capture that dust or those particles, the mucus in your lungs will catch it, and those cilia, the ciliated cells, will slowly, kind of in a wave-like motion, will move the mucus up through your trachea and into your throat, and then you just clear your throat and you end up swallowing that debris, and your stomach acids take care of the rest. Okay, well, that does it for the epithelium, part 1. Your simple squamous, simple cuboidal, simple columnar, and pseudo-stratified columnar. This is part 1 of epithelial tissue. Thanks for watching. Good luck in your studying.